Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Schultz. I am the mentor with the Media Marauders. I apologize for not being able to join you today, but it is our last day of school. But I still wanted to participate in the Mentor Showcase and share with you ideas of things that you can do in your school. And I'm going to be sharing about a project that I did this year that I am incredibly proud of. The project that I worked on was actually a collaboration between me and two other teachers. It was about text-based inquiry in STEM subject areas. So I partnered with our Intro to Engineering teacher and our biology teacher to create this unit. We started together from the beginning in selecting the text, tying to standards. This was truly an authentic collaborative effort. And the students we were working with were our 9th grade Academy of Engineering students. The reason we chose to do this with them is because they travel in a cohort together. So these students, the biology teacher has, as well as the Intro to Engineering teacher right now. So what that allowed us to do was to take the biology content and actually teach it into the Intro to Engineering curriculum, which was very exciting. What we did realize prior to implementing the unit was that kids need to work on questioning skills. Now, this is something that I've noticed working with high school students is they're not very comfortable asking higher level questions. They're very used to a learning environment in which they are just given the answer, or they are told to ask questions that have a very clear answer. That wondering about things, thinking about things on a higher level, although we talk about it a lot, it's not something that we're actually doing with these students. So they're very uncomfortable with that idea. So in order to do an authentic inquiry unit, kids need to be able to formulate inquiry-worthy questions. We call these level 5 questions, the synthesis ones. So what changes can you make? How can you solve these problems? How would you improve? So we worked with kids from the beginning of this semester, reading different texts, watching videos, encountering their different topics in their engineering class, and starting with the I wonders. I would say by the end of this, the kids were I wondered out, but I can tell you that they certainly know how to ask a more open question that is going to promote thought. So we started our unit with an anchor text, and the anchor text we decided on was the public health assessment for Camp Lejeune drinking water, which is from January 20th of this year. The reason we decided on this was because we decided the focus of our lesson would be on clean water. So clean water access and water pollution are part of the biology curriculum. And it's also one of the NAF's grand challenges for engineering. So these two things go perfectly together. We ended up with the Camp Lejeune water assessment because, one, we wanted to ensure that the resources we were using were open educational resources and open for access for anybody, no matter where they're located, so that this unit could be replicated by anyone. On top of that, it takes place in North Carolina, and it is a very relevant issue. So we wanted something that would engage kids in actual wonder and thought. So when they approach this anchor text, they read it the first time, they read it closely, and they answer some text-dependent questions. In general, you just want to make sure that they understand what they're reading about. Then they read it again, and for each paragraph, they pick an I wonder that they generate an I wonder that is their own, and they write it down. At the end, they have a whole list of I wonders that each individual student came up with. So in a group that they pick to be in their groups, they discuss their I wonders and they select the top 5 I wonders from the whole group and they chart them. We'll come back to this later as to why they chart them. But in the following days, students also read a series of supporting texts that were tied into the anchor text. The first one was a case study about the Aberdeen 3, which is an engineering case study about water contamination. Then they read an EPA publication of Understanding the Safe Drinking Water Act, and then they read an NAF publication about the Engineering Grand Challenge of Access to Clean Water. The reason we picked these supplemental texts is that it provided the kids with a full circle, a much deeper understanding of the topic at hand. So not only do they understand what happened at Camp Lejeune, but they are also able to identify another case study. They understand the law that applies, and they understand the ethical issues, and also how this ties specifically into engineering. So we wanted to make sure that they had a full circle picture. And on top of that, for each of these readings, the kids also charted their I wonders. So at the end, they had a whole entire list of I wonders. There are at least 15 I wonder questions that they had gathered from all of these texts to begin an inquiry with. So the way they I wondered is that you can see here, a lot of them did it on Post-it notes as they were going through. They have all kinds of different questions. I could tell you that most kids did not have the same wonderings, and that's what's fantastic about it, is that it gave a whole broad scope of things that they could explore. The way we narrowed it down to one question was using something called QFT, the question formation technique. I'm not going to dive too deep into that right now, but ultimately what they did was they decided on what were their top 3 questions out of all the 15, at least 15 that they charted. And then they took the frame of an engineer. So they took this engineering lens and reworded these questions, 1, to make sure that they're open-ended questions, and 2, that they had an engineering perspective. We posted all of the questions, the top 3 around the room, and we gave the entire class green stickers. And what they did was they went around the room and they voted for each group's best question, or what they thought was the best inquiry question. The reason we did this was to help kids to figure out or consider questions that maybe they weren't originally going to consider. It gave groups the idea to see other groups' ideas. Ultimately, though, the decision on which question to go with was still left up to the group. They didn't have to pick what the rest of the class picked. They could go with whatever they wanted, but having input from the class certainly helped in their decision making. Once they actually had a question, they were given the task of researching the question and developing a solution to their question using the engineering design process. So the product we had them create was a scientific poster. But in order to create the scientific poster, they had to do authentic research. So I actually gave them the directive that they were not allowed to use Google and that they had to use academic research databases. Most of them ended up using the ProQuest environmental science database. They had a lot of success with that. But I was really impressed with their ability as 9th graders to use college level resources and also then cite those resources in APA format. Once they did their research and collected their information, they then created the scientific poster. So they created the scientific posters in Google Draw, which was not something they were familiar with using, but it actually was a really fantastic tool for creating posters because you can alter dimensions. These actually ended up being the real size of what a scientific poster is. They were 3 feet by 3 feet. We printed them on a poster maker, but they were designed in Google Draw. These are a couple of examples of what the students produced. I want to make clear to you that they actually produced these posters in 3 days, which is incredibly impressive. You'll notice that they had to do college level work here in terms of what the scientific poster looks like. They had to write an abstract, an introduction. They had to put their methods. Their methods were the engineering design process. They had to talk about results, the conclusion, and then they did have to list their references in proper format. It was also advised that they include graphics and whatnot. Once they had these scientific posters, they then presented them conference style. We invited members of the community, staff members, and other classes to come and view their work. And what the students did was they presented a conference style for 90 minutes. So they stood there with their posters, they fielded questions, they explained their process. It was pretty intense, but the kids really did a great job demonstrating the level of knowledge that they know regarding this topic, and they really were experts. I was really, really impressed with the work they did, and I think they were also really, really proud of themselves because they weren't sure that they could do it, and they did. So we set a high bar, but they went above the bar, and that was really fantastic. The glows of this project, one, it was a true inquiry. Kids developed their posters and their ideas for research entirely based on inquiry questions that they generated based on text. On top of that, it was really higher level work. They're in ninth grade. This is the first time a lot of them did any sort of more intensive research project. They used academic research databases. They cited properly. They generated posters that you usually don't create until you're about a junior and senior science major in college. And then, just like any of us are at a conference, they stood there and presented and fielded questions for an hour and a half, which takes a lot of endurance. They were exhausted, but ultimately just did a fantastic job. Where we need to grow with this, the time frame, we did this all in 8 days. I would push it out to 10 days, give it 2 additional days so the kids have more time to work on their posters. Although the posters look really beautiful, we found some of them were lacking the content that we wanted them to have, and we think a lot of that had to do with the time frame. And on top of that, really emphasizing presentation skills. This is something that is a career skill. These students are engineering students. It's something they're going to have to do in their future. So we really want to equip them with the skills. Will we do this project again? Yes, absolutely. We've actually decided that this is going to be the cross-curricular project for 9th grade Academy of Engineering students. And I've had several teachers approach me afterwards telling me that they would like to do this with their students. So it's really opened up some wonderful opportunities. And yeah, it was a wonderful learning experience for me too. I became a much more reflective practitioner in terms of how I do inquiry. Thank you so much. If you have any questions about the project or you're curious to see the unit plan, you can email me or tweet me and I'd be happy to answer any more questions. I hope you enjoy, and it's been a real pleasure working with you guys this year in NCDLCN. Thank you.